we don't live in a perfect world, but as soon as we can make some of those negotiated adjustments to show the strengths of the other people, it makes, again, from a security standpoint, it makes the entire unit stronger.
We are Learn Online Security Podcast. I am Tamara Michèle, your host, and we are here today with Blair. Blair, nice to have you back on the show. So we've been talking at lengths about security. We talked earlier about Kolbe Index. It's a tool, from my understanding. It's a tool that helps you understand yourself better. If I could snapshot what I've kind of learned about it. Now, there's another aspect of this Kolbe Index that you call OPgig.
Yes.
And what kind of had me interested in it regarding security is because a lot of the time we're working in groups. So if you're working in a workplace and you have someone who they're coming to work, they're putting in their 9 to 5, they're showing up for work every day, they're getting their work done, but maybe it's not a good fit for them, or maybe they're lacking passion, or they're lacking purpose, and maybe they're just there to make money, right? Yeah. So that's okay if you're forced into something or you have to be there because you need to make money, but that isn't always a long-term fit. And it seems to me like, think when you've experienced work versus working with purpose or passion, they're just so different. Yeah. And your objective and the reason why you work changes, it shifts. So can we start maybe just talking a little bit about, you had talked a little bit about you and your dad and how you kind of got started down this path.
Yeah. And I, before I go back to that, you said a lot with one word in your career. You did something out of necessity. And that is, adulting requires us to do that. We need food on the table and we need to pay the bills. So out of necessity, we get a job. And to me, and where OPgig ties into this through the Kolbe Corp and what Kathy has created, it ties in knowing your conative strengths with career opportunities. And, I think there's a job that you get out of for necessity, pay the bills, put food on the table. And then there's that next level, which is career. And it's a very fulfilling, and it's very rewarding. But I think there's a third level, which is a calling. And I think if you learn enough about yourself, and this is where all of these things come in and fit into the whole world of security, because and going back to my story with Dad, as an 18-year-old out of high school, not an academic, was never going to go to a formal school. I went to the School of Hard Knocks and I'm still working on my master's or my PhD in that world, Tamara, but I knew I wasn't going to go to school, and my dad said, I could use some help. My oldest brother, Todd, was working with Dad at the time, and I came in and was filing. We ran an insurance brokerage, and back in those days, we actually had paper files, so I did filing, and I swept the floor, and I emptied the garbage and did all the menial tasks that were needed to be done. And in the process, it was a necessity. It was something that needed to be done, and I was helping out the family and doing things, and I enjoyed it. I met people, and through my journey with that, so I started out being the glorified janitor, receptionist in the family business, and worked into sales and all of the other things that work in that journey of progress. And I went from doing a job, it was just filling time. But I can look back in my 30 plus years of being in the insurance industry and in the family unit and watching, going from having the job to having fulfillment. And, if you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, being at a 10 and really in my sweet spot in what I did, And as I've shared with you in our other conversations,
you rise to your level of incompetency.
and to me, that's what happened as I got out of that zone of career, arguably calling as an insurance broker. And, I'm back doing that today. I'm back doing what I feel is my calling, which is, and when you get there and you see that, then you start filling in, and some people will think that it's just intuitive that you do this, but the importance of knowing your strengths and then filling in those holes so that you're as a whether you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur building a team, you need people around you to safeguard you, to do the things that you don't do well or you don't want to do. And early on, you got to do it. You don't have the cash flow to make things happen. But as soon as you can bring in that person or people to help you, then that's where the conative part becomes, really advantageous, because I know what I know about myself now conatively was there's no use me even trying to, if there's one thing in your job you could give away, what would that be? That's one of the questions that we ask.
Yeah.
And, when you hear that from somebody, the best thing you can do as a manager or an owner is take that job away from that person and find somebody else
It's going to relish having that job. And why not? Because
that task is going to fulfill somebody else, where it's going to drain that person that's having to hold on to it. So, we don't live in a perfect world, but as soon as we can make some of those negotiated adjustments to show the strengths of the other people, it makes, again, from a security standpoint, it makes the entire unit stronger.
Well, and it's also team building, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think about appreciation. That's something that really comes to my mind. It's like, okay, so I'm struggling in this area. It's something that has to be done. I can only hide from it for so long, and then I have to get it done, right? And then there's going to be a certain amount of stuff that I have to participate in, because I'm the one that, like, I know all the numbers, I'll know how to do all that stuff. Right. But when you hand it off to someone, or you even have assistance from someone that just loves it,
right,
all of a sudden you're visiting, it's not a chore anymore, and you appreciate the ability that person has, and the talent, even to enjoy it.
100%. And so to bring it back to OPgig, some people may be wondering, well, what's about this OPgig? Where have you guys gone with this? It's, for anybody looking for a career path or a calling, not just a job, the whole OPgig platform allows you to go in and really open your eyes towards careers that you maybe not even thought about. But so when I did OPgig as a Kolbe consultant, thought I should check this thing out if I'm going to recommend it to people. And as I shared with you before, off camera, it was, one of the career paths that it floated out at me was being a glass blower. And, a small town kid from Saskatchewan, that's crazy. But ironically, it was like a year later, Deb and I happened to be on a business trip up in Yellowknife. And that was one of the artisans up there, was a glass blowing shop. So they let us come in, and it was cool. Is it something that I have a passion for? No, it was kind of like, check, did that.
Yeah.
But I could see with my MO that it fits into the MO, but without the passion to do it, I'm not going to engage to do it. But I would have never thought of it as a possible career path,
right.
A calling, those sort of things. And that's what we encourage people to do is, don't get stuck in a job. There's so much out there. And when you actually get into something that's fulfilling in a career, and it doesn't mean you have to be a self-employed, but within your sphere of influence that gives you joy, we really encourage people to find that sweet spot. And when it comes to completing an organization, with our coaching company, we the number one asset in an organization is the payroll expense. One of my mentors told me that 20 years ago. Happened to be an accountant, and I never thought accountants really cared about people. They just cared about numbers. And Don shared with me that statement. Don since passed away and was a great mentor friend of not only mine but our families, and that always stuck with me as a very intriguing and challenging statement. So I've always, and I think that was what sent me on a different direction as a business owner, partner, manager, peer, was realizing how integral the people were in your organization. And I think I took it for granted. And then I started focusing on the quality of the work that people will do when you give them the right tasks, the right authority, the right opportunities to flourish and grow.
Well, there's two things that I think of. So one of them is I think of like when you have a car, you're running around your little Ford Focus, and it's getting you from A to B, and then all of a sudden you're like upgraded to like this GT with like this huge engine, and it's running, everything's like ticking properly, and it can go 0 to 60, or it can just purr. I think we are like that, and we don't always, I think, know our potential. And so I think this is really beautiful in a way, is like where you are able to kind of pull out, it's like a thread, where you pull out the people themselves will be self-directed, because they're learning to discover themselves, right? And you get to observe the process, so you can help position them as a business owner or a team leader where they should be. And then everybody reaps that reward. Yeah,
and that's what I find exciting is getting people to understand their potential and encourage them to strive to that potential. I don't think in society that we push or promote people to try a little, to step out and do some people,
even things that they're scared of sometimes, right? Or they're not sure of, or so we like to do things that we know.
Yes.
Because then we don't look stupid, right? And we don't look foolish.
When I listen to you, now that I, doing my Kolbe certification 10 years ago, you can't not wonder what people's Kolbe indexes are, what motivates them, what, what will inspire you, because you talk about fake it till you make it, whereas you'll have other MOs that sort of thing would just terrify them, because they need the structure and they need to understand those things. So in a team environment, in a culture, in an organization, knowing that you've got somebody that's going to take that lead and that risk, show that strength, it allows other people to come in and fill in and do other things that they're really good at, and without, they'll be picking you up and you'll be picking them up. And to me, that is the importance of the culture of an organization. Most organizations don't know their culture. This is getting off. And all this comes into the security of...
Well, I think it's about getting to know your team.
It is.
And trusting your team.
And number one is knowing yourself, knowing your strengths. And as you know your strengths, then you can be vulnerable with your team. And as the team becomes stronger, then it impacts the culture of the organization. And part of that is, what is the why? There's a thought leader, Simon Sinek, that I really enjoy, and he goes, that's his big question: know your why. It starts with why, is his one book, and it's a great profound question. It's very simple, but it's not just you as the individual, it's also the team. What is your culture as a team? And thirdly, and most important in a corporate environment, is, why do you exist? Why do you do what you do as a company? And if you don't know those things, it keeps shifting, and the definition will change. You bring in a new personality, they impact the culture. If you haven't defined the culture, the culture will get defined for you. And what you started out in with this tight-knit little business unit will turn into something drastically different. Well, and one of the other pieces we use an integrity model, and we talk about the 6 pillars. And of course, integrity is an inward thing.
And this is the 6 pillars, the Bill Pipke?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we actually use Bill's book.
In your business?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it
fits.
It fits in life. So it's simple, it's straightforward. We talk about the, influence, trust, honor, dignity, truth, and authenticity. Those are the 6 pillars, and how, if you're practicing those, living them out as an individual and living them out as an organization.
Well, it spills over.
And again, so does that.
And it creates the culture.
And which creates a strong, and the security of the organization. So it's
interesting because it's a very high bar.
Yeah.
And yet I can see how it would be very successful, especially when in an organization, in a business, people are constantly being challenging themselves to kind of be their best. And then being able to run at that 5, 8, 10, instead of like coming to work and putting in a 1 or a 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. We are going to continue now with our heroes portion. That is a membership you can join for free, and that is here on YouTube.